What's up, everybody? Welcome to Thursday Lunch Break. We're already shooting the breeze, telling funny stories, and I cannot repeat what I just told these guys, but it was funny. Anyway,
I heard nothing.
Yeah, you heard nothing. Hope you guys are having a good Thursday, and we're calling this lunch break. We're doing this every Thursday at noon, and you can literally just eat your lunch with us. We're drinking coffee because we're caffeine addicts. I don't know. What are you drinking, Shane? What is that?
First off, I'd just like to say good morning. Thursday morning. Drinking water.
Really?
It's a
Really?
reference to
We'll just let that keep
a
going.
funny YouTube video. You either know or you don't.
I'm drinking water. I already had my
Caffeine.
my amino
You're
acids,
hydrating?
caffeine plus coffee.
So do you guys like drink coffee early and then like water the rest of the day, or is it like coffee, water? That's kind of how I do it.
Yeah. Coffee, water. I'll start with water in the morning.
Right.
So we're in Israel.
Yeah.
And we were with our guide, and he like hit me hard. He's like, the first thing you should drink when you wake up
Water.
is water.
Yeah, I remember him
and
saying
he like
that.
saying it, and I was like,
He was dead
He
serious.
was dead serious. He's
Yeah.
like, you're dehydrated when you go to bed. I was
Yeah.
like, dang. I took it to the bank. I went home. I didn't take anything else from Israel, but you better wake up and drink
Yeah.
water. So
Yeah.
like, it's a habit now. I come and drink a couple.
Well,
glasses
those
of water
guides
the
in
morning.
Israel, they hit that so hard. They're like, make sure you drink water. Make sure you drink water. And I think there's a lot of like older people that probably don't drink water and they pass out and they have to deal with it. So
Sure. Well,
it's important to be hydrated.
compared to their coffee over there, they don't know, but our coffee's more like water.
Yeah.
Compared to their stuff.
Oh
Their
my
stuff's
gosh.
good. We took all of the free coffee stuff from all the hotels to our
Yeah.
hotel rooms when we were there and took them home because their coffee
So
was so good.
on one trip, and we never did it before or after, we the guide took us to this place where we had Turkish coffee and baklava. And I ate like 4 baklava, and then I was told that they're like 1,000 calories a piece. They're like like bricks. But man, honestly, it was the best thing that I have ever had in Israel or on any trip. It was like the best coffee
That's
ever.
awesome.
But
Yeah,
we were
their coffee's
I was
good.
all hopped up on sugar and caffeine.
And it works.
Yeah.
Their coffee works. Because
Yeah.
let's just be honest, we drink coffee because we need it to work. right?
Yeah. I like it too, though. I really do like coffee and yerba mate. So
Yeah, yerbas.
yeah, it's
I
good
like
stuff.
those yerbas.
All right, so anyway, we're going to talk today about some stuff. We're going to get into some stuff. Shane has some stuff he wants to talk about. If you guys have any questions for us throughout this time, we're keeping it very casual on Thursdays. It's Thursday afternoon. We're trying to, make it more like a hangout session than a serious talk. But we will get into some serious stuff, and if you guys have questions, we'll definitely answer those questions the best we can. So go ahead and send those on Facebook or YouTube. The guys are watching, so do that. So Shane, today I wrote some notes down based on what you wanted to talk about earlier the week. But why don't you explain what it is that you want to discuss today? Because Shane is our guest. I was gonna start off like I did last week and say, Shane, tell me about your life. But the truth is, everyone pretty much knows about your life
Yeah, okay.
because you're the guy you're like an open book.
Absolutely.
So you have 2 boys. You have a wife. You guys are a fun-loving couple. You guys you do the young. What do you guys do? Is young? Is it what's the ministries that you guys do?
So we do a young marrieds on Monday, and we preface the word young.
Make
but
sure you're in the mic too. I think
we're probably all 20s and 30s, but we have probably like 8 or 9 couples that come over to our house on Mondays. Everybody seems to have like 2 kids, so it's like chaos, but we're still trying to like create community. We've created like this family to where we're trying to live out like Acts, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to get to that point.
Right.
We'll always be far from it, but this idea that nobody in the group will ever be in need. So we've had plenty of circumstances where couples have blessed other couples within our group, and we've gone on a few trips, and we're just becoming family. And then I just started the young adults back up again to where it's, again, that word young. But I feel like, to me, that's where my heart is for these people that are between 20s and 30s, 20-year-olds, because I knew how crazy it was in my 20s. Making life decisions. Nobody taught me how to do my taxes.
Right.
Nobody, you know what I mean? And a lot of people, they grew up in homes where they didn't have, both parents or good parents. And so there's a lot of kids just trying to figure life out, let alone a relationship with God out. So, yeah, so those are.
I like
the
what you
2
said about
main
family.
ministries.
I think that the church more than ever needs to become more of a tight family unit because we are headed into some crazy times, and I just think that the days of attending church on Sundays and then going about your life. I feel like things are changing. I feel like the commitment level is getting deeper with a lot of people, and they're doing these life groups, and in these life groups, they're becoming family, and I really appreciate that. So if you're not involved in something like that, just make sure that you reach out to your local church, whoever that is, and make sure you get involved. But,
yeah, and I don't think that, because I think some people, especially maybe if they're in a bigger church like ourselves, they think that close relationship or community is really hard to find just because the initial awkward, getting to know people aspect. But really, that is the only awkward part of creating awesome community within, smaller groups or whatever in a large church. And so I would second that, encourage people to
and if you're worried about acceptance, like, just keep showing up, and just and I've always said that, like, if you don't have a lot of Christian friends, be a Christian friend, be a good friend to somebody, and just go out of your way to help, or just be there and say hi, make yourself known. And
So,
I've seen that happen.
We just recently bought a house like a year ago. We're in a cul-de-sac, right? And the number one thing as a child, one of my favorite movies was The Sandlot. And there's that scene in The Sandlot where it was 4th of July and just like the whole neighborhood in the cul-de-sac, they're all partying together, all hanging together, right? And so that resonated in my mind when we got this house in this cul-de-sac. And right now we're redoing our front yard, and the neighbors, we're getting to know the neighbors through this, like talking out front. I have my neighbor Bob, literally his name's Bob, and just that neighborhood where you wave that and you know each other by name, and it's like he brought over a hydraulic lift. I got a flat tire on my truck, brought it over to my front door. It was like, just return it after you're done. So for me, it's a huge step, because even though, when I was telling somebody this the other day, and I know we got to get to our topic, but as much as I can be outward and like energetic in some areas, I really do have that side where I'll be a recluse when I'm in my home, and I'm not necessarily that first person to go like, hey, let me break this barrier down. But like you can tell, once you get me talking, it's hard to get me to stop.
Having good neighbors, though, makes a huge difference, right? Like
Does.
in your neighborhood and stuff, like, because you feel more protected. You're like, these guys, you feel like that sense of community where people have your back in your neighborhood. And when you don't know your neighbors, when everyone just runs inside, you're like, you start making up things in your mind about that person's this or that person's that, right?
No, there's
They can be the nicest
person in our cul-de-sac, and I'm not the youngest one in the cul-de-sac. There's this young guy, and they threw a party the other night. It got wild, and I was like, you know what? I'm not the young guy on the block anymore. But yeah, no, for sure. You start thinking like, what's going on in that house? Maybe they're doing something.
So I have like a Wilson in my backyard.
Do you really?
Yeah, this guy, my neighbor, he's an older gentleman, super sweet, and he like always pops up over the fence. Literally, you can see his eyes, and he's like, "Hey, neighbor, how's it going?" And we talk all the time.
That's so
And he
awesome.
talks to
That is
my kids
awesome.
and stuff, and it's really funny. He's really hilarious. It's fun. It's fun when you have good neighbors,
That's a breath of fresh air. People need to know that stuff's still going on.
right?
now.
Right?
Yeah, for
It
sure.
is cool, man. So, all right. So, Shane, why don't you share about what you want to share about today? And I think we'll get into some interesting discussions with it. I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, like so many people, I take deep dives on YouTube. I'm not
Okay.
sure if a lot of people do that, but I think the majority now, YouTube's
think it's,
pretty darn popular,
It's
right?
a thing. And I don't even think it's age related anymore.
No,
There's
not at
older
all.
people that are into it, younger people.
Dude, you can learn how to do anything
Yeah.
on YouTube. So I take deep dives on YouTube. I love the app because, the algorithms or whatever they put in there, stuff starts populating on your feed just like a social media thing. But it was some time ago where I started seeing like these van life videos where these people were selling all of their possessions and deciding or choosing to live a life, you maybe call it minimalistic lifestyle, and just hitting the road, right? They would find a job, or they're basically chasing their passion. When you get to watch these videos, some of them are couples, some of them they're people by themselves, some of them they actually travel in groups. And Vince, you probably know a lot about this too, where some people like renovate school buses, and there's like multiple buses that are traveling in packs across the country. Some of these they get their vans shipped to other countries and then travel and stay at all these remote places. And basically it was this idea, their mentality is they're wanting to live a life, even though it would seem impossible. They're wanting to live a life that in their mind is chasing their passions, no matter if that looks like quote unquote successful or not to the modern world. And I started thinking like there really is a shift, and maybe it's ignorance because of what I'm consuming, but the shift, like you can, when I grew up, you went to college, That was the thing.
Right.
After high school, you immediately started talking about college. That was the thing that you did. You got a job, a career, a vocation. You stuck with that to make money, and the goal was to get the house. You know, you get in that stigma, the white picket fence, right? And have the toys to where you can go on vacations on the weekend. Even taking this farther, I remember when I was in my young 20s, I was dating a girl, and I had always wanted to be a musician since I was about 16 years old, got my first band. That's what I wanted to do in my life. And I think when I was about 21, I quit my job because we were going to hit the road and go on tour. And I remember my girlfriend's dad literally kicked me out of the house because he said, my daughter's not going to date an unemployed man. And I was like, dang, that's a bummer, right? But in my mind, I'm chasing what I'm passionate about. So I wanted to kind of discuss like this mentality shift. And I want to preface that I don't think possessions are bad, because I think that you can chase what you're passionate about, whether that quote unquote fits into the mold of a American career that gets you a retirement plan and an IRA account or whatever it is. You can get possessions chasing your passion, but to me it seems I'm finding out that the more I chase my passion, even if that leads to less possessions or less money, I'm living I'm happier.
Right.
And so I guess I want to discuss where you guys fall with that nature. You guys have kids. You know, I have to keep that in mind. Do I want to push my boys as they grow up to go get a career? Because a lot of the guys, it was just like, especially when you go back even farther, there weren't very, very many vocations. Like men fell into this mold of, 4 or 5 different vocations, and that's what you went to do because those were the quote-unquote successful jobs. I know I'm throwing a lot of air quotes out there, and I'm almost done talking. But for our kids in this new generation, like you, for example, I was thinking when you took the photography thing, you literally got passionate about it, and you quit a job that you probably loved to go chase your passion.
Sure.
And it worked out for you, right?
Right.
Now you're doing something that you're passionate about, that you love, and God has used it to bring it full circle to where you're using it to do what you were doing in the first place. But where do you guys fall on this line as far as, your kids? What are we going to help our kids make the decision? Chase passion or set yourself up for success?
I mean, what's the greatest thing we can give our children? And I've thought about this a lot lately. And I think that prior generations would have said, you got to leave them with something. You got to leave them with money. You got to leave them with, a house or some sort of, like you said, possession type thing. And, I think our generation would probably say that you've got to leave them, you've got to teach them to be responsible. You got to teach them to know how to live in life. And I think that I would add to that, like I would say that the most important thing that we can give to our children is love. It's teaching them that not only does God love you, not only do your parents love you, but you can take that love and you can care about other people. And I know it sounds hippie again, but I think that requires a lot of time spent. And so I've chosen to spend more time with my family and less time chasing passions and dreams of my own now in my life, right? I'm 40, so it's when I was younger, it was different. We didn't have kids until I was 38. So, no, 37. Yeah, 37, 36, 37, somewhere in there. Anyway, I didn't have kids until I was older in my 30s. So, my wife and I spent a lot of time traveling and a lot of time with each other, and it was good and bad. I mean, it's like you spend too much time with somebody and you're like, but we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of good times, and I think that when you're young, that's what that is. It's a way for you to, if you sell everything and get in a van and drive around and do that for a season, like that could be really eye-opening and teach you what's important in life. As a long-term lifestyle, I don't know how it fits. I was looking at van life on Instagram, and I came across this couple that sold everything, and they're artists. And so they would sell their art. They lived in LA, and they would sell their art. And so I think they had like a studio in LA still, but they took a van and they just drove around and they lived their life. And so I found some interesting quotes from them. It says, this is like their mantra. It says, working hard enough to put enough money into the bank to fund their travels without having to turn their whole life over to something other than their passion. Okay. That was like their point. Another thing that they wrote is, that said, if anyone needs a house sitter for a couple of days or has a safe driveway you don't mind us letting us park in, once in a while, let us know. So I thought that was funny because they're like, we're gonna do this, but hey, if you got a house, it'd be cool to stay in a house again.
Right,
so
right.
I think that like grass is always greener on the other side in a way, and I think that some people are like get excited about things, about projects. I know we do, and then we move on. We like do something for a while, and then we move on. We do something for a while, and to me, that's exciting. That's exciting in life. But when it comes down to it, we have to talk in terms of being Christians, right? And I have a philosophy that we are not supposed to follow our passions. Okay. Now we've talked about this before, and this isn't a critique of what you're saying, but let me just explain what I mean by that. Because there's another way this can be taken. Jesus said, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Right. And the word treasure there actually, the definition basically means like a treasure chest. So it's like a treasure chest that you open up and you put what's important in there. You invest. It's like whatever is important in your life, you put it in that chest, and that's what's important. And so that whatever you put in your chest will ultimately lead your passion. Like that's what you will care about in life. And so in one respect, like following your passions is okay, but you also lead your passions before you follow them, if that makes sense. So like you cared about music, right? I would assume it's because at one point you chose to pick up a guitar or you chose to pick up a bass, whatever it was you played, and then you chose to spend time doing it. And then as you did that, you started caring more about it. Yeah, and I think that like we follow interests, right? Like think about your wife. When you first met your wife, you're like, "Oh, she's interesting," right? She's interesting. So you spend time with her. And then you're like, "Oh, I'm starting to care more about her," right? And then you spend more time. And then you invest, and all of a sudden you're like years down the road and you really love this person because you've invested.
It's an investment, right?
Your time. And so I think that's how I see passions. And so when I think about jumping in a van and traveling the world, it seems like that would have a shelf life for me because I'd be like, okay, this is great for right now. Like, dude, like for a while, it would really accomplish something. I think it would really accomplish, especially if you're young, you're still trying to figure out life.
Right.
I think it would accomplish that. You would travel, see different places, maybe learn a lot about yourself. Maybe if you're young and married, obviously, I don't think you should just jump in the van with some random girl or guy and go travel the world. I don't think it's a good idea. Yeah, yeah, that probably won't end well. But if you're young and married and you want to do this with your wife, like go for it. You know, if you're young, go for it. Do it. You'll probably learn something. But ultimately, I think our responsibility is to take care of the communities around us, even when they're going to crap. Like I see people leaving California, and I'm like, if God tells me I can leave California, I'll leave California. But He's not telling me that right now. So right now I have to stay here. I have to stay here and make this better, right? And so there's a responsibility there. So I'm going to invest time in that, and then I'm going to care about that, if that makes sense. And that I'm going to be following that passion.
I think it's two ways though too, because you have the other side where when you're younger, you don't really know what you want. Right. And I think like what I wanted at my 18-year-old self and what I want now is completely, and I'm talking very selfishly, like, right? Like the things that I thought I wanted when I was 18 and things I think I want now at 38 are completely different, right? Like, so going back and telling my 18-year-old self, these are the things you probably should do would be completely different. My 18-year-old self probably still wouldn't have listened, you know? But I will say what Shane is saying, a lot of people are, this van life, it's popular. It's way bigger than just a couple YouTube channels. It's a way of life now. And I think people are not wanting to be tied down to, there's a hashtag, never 9 to 5. They don't want to be tied down to the stereotypical, the way that, you know, the last generation did it, where they worked to their bone and they didn't experience anything. Kind of like you were saying, where it's good to have that experience, but they don't want to ever be tied down to anything. Which is interesting, but it's also, like, you think about it and you're like, in some ways, that is also biblical, because they don't have, like, there is not a house payment that's controlling them. There's not a job that's they're free to go and do what they need to do. Like, you there's some freedom in that.
My practical mind kicked in because I'm old. What state are they paying taxes in?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, and that's the thing I was going to say. When you talk about it like that.
You just opened up a whole new thing. I'm like, wait, this van life sounds better.
That's the old person where we think, like, that's really irresponsible what they're doing. You know what I mean?
They have no address.
Yeah. So,
Anyway,
but
it's
yeah,
really off the
no,
grid.
no,
When they
that's-
say
that's
off the grid,
I
when they
like
say
it.
off the grid, they're like, I'm not paying taxes.
I think everyone just right now just figured out that they're gonna say they're gonna do van life, but actually,
Yeah,
they
they're
don't have
trying
to
to
pay
avoid taxes, yeah.
Josh just got them out of
Yeah.
taxes for the next year. Good job, Josh.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
No problem.
But the idea is that that you're living free and that you're not tied down to anything. And I think there is something to be said in that you're like, because you said God has told you not to leave California. And
Well,
that's
I didn't say that.
right. Well, you said right now
I said he hasn't told me to leave
to
California
leave
at
California.
this point.
Okay.
I'm not saying I'm doing
Which
either
which
one,
is
but
good, but it would be really, really hard to just up and leave too. In some ways,
It
you
would.
can't just leave. You
Absolutely.
have a great job. You have
Yeah.
a job. You have
Well, I
family here. You
I have a
life.
responsibility,
Right.
and that's what makes it difficult. for
Where
me.
these people would say they could just go if God told them to go. Say put the
Sure.
God. They
Yeah.
could just get up and leave, and there's
Right.
not anything.
and I
tying
don't
them
all
down.
and I don't think that when you're young, if you don't have a lot of direction, I don't think it's bad just to jump out and do something, whether God tells you or not. I think that if God tells you specifically to do something, you should do it. But sometimes God lets us, when we're young, He lets us go and do things on our own. He lets us explore and
Yeah,
learn. I
there's-
mean, I really do believe that. I really do. I think
And
that
I would agree
there's a lot
with
of
you.
freedom.
Definitely, and there's different angles to even look at this. This is a very open concept to where you can look from the responsibility as far as God's calling side, where we're discussing more of like the life you want to live decision is basically, do I want to have all these work a lifestyle to where I get all these possessions and then kind of comes with a lack of freedom, or do I want to live this way that comes with a lack of flexibility or in per se as financially is concerned, but have freedom. And it reminds me of that old thing, you guys probably heard it too, where somebody used to say like, work hard in your 20s and 30s and 40s, so when you have money, then you can live a life of freedom, as opposed to live that life of freedom throughout your 20s, and then you're working hard for your 30s, your 40s, and your 50s. And I go like, well, I don't know which one's better or worse.
I don't espouse to that lifestyle either.
Right.
I think that's a sad way of
Right, but I
thinking.
think what's happening. You're right. I like you're bringing up some good point, Shane, because a lot of people they live that. They're like, I'm going to work hard in my 20s and 30s, and then I'm going to retire. I'm going to start to slow down in my 40s. Well, a lot of people in their 40s, there was a recession, and all of their money that they had, all the things they worked for, went, and then they realized nothing's promised.
Right.
Because we're talking about things that are promised and things that aren't promised. Just because you work hard your whole life doesn't mean that at some point it can't go away, right? We've seen many stories where things change overnight. So the idea of living possessionless is, in some ways, it's more freeing. I'm not saying I'm just making another art, like a point here. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with it.
Well,
But
technically,
biblically, you have a lot of stories in the Bible where God calls people, leave your possession, go out and do this thing. And there's stories where you have these people that say like they struggle with it, right? Because they're tied to the things that they have, and they just can't, they can't pick up and go.
And I don't want to alienate people that are like, there's no way I even have the option to do this. Like people
sure, I
with families
understand.
and stuff.
Right.
But I think the same mindset could be applied, that what we're talking about, could be applied to moving to Texas or moving to Idaho
100%.
or moving to, to another place and just wanting more freedom. I need land. I need this. I need this in order to feel this, right? It's that's the mindset that we're really talking about. And, I personally, I love the outdoors and I love adventures. I bought a motorcycle that is a dual sport motorcycle so that I could take off in the mountains and go find a trail and get lost. And I love that stuff. And to me, I feel free when I'm doing that stuff. But there's nothing that fulfills me in life as much as being with my family and being with the people that God has brought into my life and living life with them through the difficult times and the good times. There's just nothing like it. Like living a life of, I would call it community ministry, whatever you want to call it, but living life with people, fellowship, whatever you want to call it, like having that family to me is the most important thing. That's why I'm here. I'm here because my family's here, and not just my parents, right? Not just my wife's family, but we're here because our church family's here. We're
And
here
my
because our
wife
people are here.
disagrees with me with this mentality. Because I bring this up quite often at home, and she'll go like, "If you want to live in a van so much, go live in a van. Like if you want to go
You just
do
talk
that,
about it all
just
the time.
go."
Do you have posters in
she's
your room?
My wife
but
won't threaten me with that.
She gets annoyed because I bring it up so much. So I just want to state that fact
Van
that my
life
wife
shame.
is really about like. But I told her the other day, I said like, we could live in this house, have all these possessions,
Right.
and then never travel, never go on vacation.
Vince is a weekend van lifer.
Or we could downgrade and live where we travel all the time and have more freedom because of financial things.
Right.
But going back to what you said, you go like, I don't want to, say the wrong thing for the people that have kids that can't do this. And it's like, that's another, for me, at least an opinion. where I've trapped myself in this box because why, as much as I don't want to live in a van with my kids because of the close capacity, it's literally not impossible.
Let me tell you this.
You know what I mean?
Let me tell you
Like-
about this guy. His name's Chuck Feeney. Okay, Chuck Feeney lives in a modest apartment in San Francisco. He,
I feel like you're narrating a film right now.
I know,
We're
right?
watching Chuck get
Chuck
up to
Feeney,
brush his teeth.
and he's an older gentleman. And the thing about Chuck Feeney is he worked really hard his whole entire life. He made a fortune. He was a billionaire. Okay, and at one point in his life, he made the decision that he wanted to give all of his money away. And now you look him up, Chuck Feeney. There's a new article on him just a couple weeks ago. He gave away $8 billion of his fortune, and he lives in a modest apartment in San Francisco. But he worked hard. He built, those duty-free shops in airports? He was behind all that.
Oh, wow.
And then he's just a really good business guy. Made all kinds of money. Still does some investments, but he does it through a foundation, and he gives it all away. But he just finished giving all of his money away, and he's like in his 80s. I'm like, that's
$8 billion.
$8 billion, and it took him his whole life. Like it took him like a good portion of his life to make the money, and then it took him a good portion of his life to give it away. Like it was a whole thing. Like he had to actually go to the Bahamas and sign these papers to put this money into this nonprofit so that he could avoid legalities if you were to have to have done it in the States. A really interesting guy. But that idea of giving everything away in life, and I know that not everybody has $8 billion to give away, obviously, but we have a life to give, right? And I think that when you're in a van in the middle of nowhere, you're giving to whoever's in the van with you, and you're giving, and you're, and maybe you need that time as retrospect. But I was telling you a story before, what we were laughing about. I'll just tell you a lighter version of the story. What we were laughing, what we were laughing about when we first started the podcast is my wife and I went on a hike in Hawaii once, and we were hiking, and we walked around the corner, and we saw this old man, probably in his 70s. He's hard to tell, but he's just naked, sitting on a rock, sharpening a knife. And I'm like, what is going on here? I turn in another corner, I see an old lady taking a shower in a waterfall. And what we had stumbled upon, I found out later, was an old 1960s hippie commune, and some of them stayed there, right? And so like a long time ago, in this area in Kauai, like these hippies just they said, we're going to take over this land, and there's thousands of them, and they had their own commune, and they just did whatever they wanted. They were off the grid doing their thing and not paying taxes, right? But some of them stayed. Oh, I forgot to tell you about the old man that I saw. He was a real big fat guy, and he had dug a hole for his belly, and he was laying in it, and so just his butt was sitting. And I was like,
There's
man,
a term for that. What is it?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, you don't know the term.
I don't know, but my wife and I are sitting here on this beautiful beach. We had kayaked in. We're sleeping in a cave, and I walked out and saw, we're like seeing these old naked people. I'm like, what is this? I found out that it was just hippies. But I was thinking about it. I was thinking, like, those people believed in something at one point, right? They believed in living this life, and they were the ones that never gave up on that belief. But now here they are on some random beach. It's beautiful, but they were all alone. Each one of them was in their own spot. They probably hate each other. It was just it was a really weird mindset. They just looked like crazy old, homeless-ish people that were naked.
Yeah.
And, some people say, oh, they're living the life. They're doing the thing. But I'm like, man, I think that they got lost along the way of an ideal. They were into an ideal, but then they got lost along the way.
Have you ever seen that movie, Mr. Deeds, with Adam Sandler?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, we were just talking about it, weren't we? Mentioned
It's classic, right?
Classic.
So remember the ending. I'm not sure if they're in a
Yep.
courtroom or not, right? And he goes like, how many in here wanted it? What did you want to be when you were
Yeah,
a
when
kid?
you want to grow up.
And
yeah.
all these people raise their hand, and the guys, oh, I wanted to be a veterinarian, and
Yeah.
I wanted to be
Yeah,
a
we saw it,
fireman,
yeah.
and all these things. And van life aside, I guess and obviously I still have a job where I work 9 to 5. I have a
dad's
home
watching
and
this right now. He's taking notes.
a roof that
Shane wants
I
to
put
live in a
over my
van.
kids' heads. But it's this idea that there might be people out there that have just settled. The word settled comes to mind, where they go
Right.
like, I'm fine living a life where I'm providing for my family. Some moms probably have settled into this fact where I'm going to stay at home mom. I take care of my kids, take care of my household. That's just me. When in actuality, like, God created us with passions and giftings to use those things. We've allowed responsibility. Some of us have no choice. I get it. But it's just more so the thought of like, if you're out there and you have found yourself like, I'm passionless, I'm just kind of going through the motions, life is taking me along in this current because I didn't do what my passion was, and I would agree with you that if you start putting your heart and your time and your energy into something, that passion will follow.
Right.
I believe that in most circumstances. I think if I dig a hole every day for the rest of my life, I'll never be passionate about digging holes. But
Right.
that's,
You might get creative with it.
yeah, might
Never know.
get a little creative with it. But it's this idea of like, there's a lot of people that punch in and punch out of life in general, because I believe that if your work life is like that, that reflects, like we know, that reflects your home life, that reflects how you parent, that reflects how you treat your spouse. It just on so many levels. So I guess for me, it's kind of like, am I going to sell my stuff and live in a van? No. Does it encourage me to think a little deeply? Am I chasing all the things I'm passionate about or gifted in, or I feel like God has called me to, regardless if it seems impossible? Like, there's so many people out there that have thought about entrepreneurship that have gone like, no, it's too hard.
That's
There's
too hard.
there's
Yep.
too many obstacles.
And I don't want to shoot down anybody's ideas or like some people, they dream of doing stuff like this, and you know what? Maybe there's a purpose behind it that I don't see. Maybe like, and so I don't want to shoot anything down. Like some people, these people that I found, they're on Instagram. They're reaching an audience on Instagram, and they're influencing them in a way and giving them hope. And so
Right.
I see that there could be a purpose in doing something like that. So I don't want to knock something I don't understand fully, right? But at the same time, I think for Christians, it's important for us to just to consider our responsibility. And I think that if you want to live a fulfilled life, that's a really important part of living a fulfilled life, is acknowledging and committing to something, even though you don't want to. I think that there's just a value in that. And so however you want to live your life, that's up to you. I believe in freedom. I believe that God created freedom. But at the end of the day, that freedom is really well spent when you give a little bit of it up to do something good. And it really does encourage not just you, but the people around you. And there's a fulfillment in that. Fulfillment that I've never found anywhere else.
So Raquel says, great discussion, refreshing, I love it. And she mentioned Tiny House Nation. And she's going along just basically saying these people are also what you said, Shane, giving up your big home for a tinier home so that you're not crushed by the pressure of constantly making these big payments, crushed by car payments.
I'm behind that. I think that's great.
And I think that's where the van life kind of comes in, where people don't want to be crushed by the idea that you have to have what the Joneses have, or you have to have all this stuff, right? That you can be more possessionless and be able to do what you want to do. And again, that comes with entrepreneurship. You can't be an entrepreneur if you don't sacrifice something, right? You have to be able to give up that car that you drive. You have to be able to give up Starbucks every day. You have to be able to give up something in order to get something. I know a lot of people forget that when you talk about money and sacrifice. That was somebody was telling me about this very successful guy that I know, and they were kind of getting mad about it, and they were jealous, like, oh, you know, this person, they don't share their wealth and whatever. But what they don't see is all the money that he gave away in his younger years, like and he didn't drive a nice car, and he didn't have, you know, he didn't go travel the world, but he was constantly making these sacrifices so that at one point his business could make it. And a lot of people don't see that. And so there is the other side of that coin. I will say for me, and I want to go back to something real quick you said in the beginning, Shane. When we were younger, and I agree with this, we didn't get the education we deserved. And I know it sounds weird to say, but in meaning like not a knock on our teachers, but no one told me when I loved making videos when I was like 14, 15, 16. I remember when I met Josh, I'm like, let's make videos. Like it was like something I love making skate videos, but no one told me when I was that age that I could do that for a living. It was like kind of musician thing, right? It's like a pipe. You're never going to make money doing that. So I never pursued it. I never took it serious because it was like a hobby, not something I thought I could actually make a living in. And I always look back and think, if somebody would have told me you can actually do this for reals, I would have committed to it. You know, I would have locked into it and been like, I think I can do this for the rest of my life. So I think now there's this shift culturally where people have more education, where they realize I can actually do something that I didn't think I could do before. And I think that's what's leading a lot of this in our generation.
Again, the more I talk to you guys, the more I'm even changing my thoughts on it. You can be part with the internet. you can actually be a part of a community while driving around a van, you know.
Sure.
And so
Huge
there's a
communities. People have
possibility
millions of followers
to
with
do
Yeah.
this, right? And so I don't want to knock anybody that was like, "Hey, I feel like this is what I'm supposed to do." I did hear about a guy a couple years ago who was living in a motorhome, driving around the country, talking to people about God, you know. And I was like, "Well, that's awesome. That's really cool," you know. And so I don't want to knock anybody's plan. I think God is very creative with us, and He'll lead us to do some wild things, you know. And I want to keep that sense of adventure in our minds, but at the same time, my biggest thing is just whatever you're considering. If you're young, consider your purpose over your passion, because I think that your purpose will become your passion. I really do think that's true. So that's the gist of what I'm saying.
Right,
And even going back, I grounded it back into a verse, and this verse is pretty Jesus talking about discipleship and following him. And in Matthew 16:24-28, he's telling the Pharisees, he's talking to the Pharisees in this conversation, but he basically tells them, anybody who wishes to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. And he says, what good is it to profit the world but lose your soul? And I think a lot of this can come down to, if you're in it for yourself, if you're in it for trying to build something in this as Christians, right? It's never going to come out the way you think it is. You can't buy happiness. Like you said, the guy gave away. There's nothing you can do if God isn't behind it that is going to fulfill you and make you satisfied. And in some ways, I'm thankful. Like when I was younger, I gave my, all of my 20s. And some days, I'm not going to lie, some days I regret it. I'm like, I can't believe I gave my 20s away to teaching kids, youth about God. Like, I'm like, what could I have done in my 20s to put me in a better spot today? But then I go back and like, I can never trade that time in my life for anything else, because it was the most satisfying, fulfilling. But it's a sacrifice, right? In some ways at the time, I knew I was supposed to be there and be doing it, but sometimes we lose sight of that. It's like God, like you said, doing something we don't want to do, or necessarily it isn't going to bring anything to us, but it's actually the most fulfilling thing that we can do.
Well, hindsight is 20/20, and I think a lot of the frustrating moments that we've had in our lives have also made us who we are today, and it gives us a better understanding. I think like some of the younger people are like, you don't understand us, and now we're the old people. But
I'm not old.
But
You're 40. You're not 40.
It's debatable.
No, I'm 35. I'll be
Yeah.
36
I'm in my
next month.
30,
But
Trust
flirting
me,
and thriving.
to Cohen and Seth that are behind the camera over there, you guys are old.
Those guys are old.
if I could speak to the younger generation, I'm not sure how many younger people will
And we
watch
do
this
have
or
one
even
serious
so.
question too we got to get to. So
Okay.
let me get to that.
Yeah, we have like.
Okay.
I just
10
have a
minutes.
quote by Simon Sinek, and this I want to say this right here is: do not have FOMO. Right,
Oh,
this
yeah.
FOMO, because
That
that will
Instagram
lead
culture.
That will
Well, say
lead
what
you.
FOMO is.
Well,
Let people-
FOMO is fear of missing out.
Yes.
Like that will don't make a decision because you're.
So that's what my kid's been
afraid.
saying.
Right. He's been saying FOMO, but it goes along, and it might not be exactly right, but it goes along with this idea of, again, you said you regretted your 20s, what you could have done in your 20s because you made a decision to do something,
But
and
FOMO.
then looking back, it's kind of like this. You look back at like, crap, I missed out on this, or I didn't able to do this. So like for me, chasing music, I had that, I was working in the mall as a manager of the store, got offered a job to work for Spy Sunglasses in corporate, but instead of taking that job, I quit my job entirely to go make no money traveling, making music for, you know what I mean, however
You
long
live the van life
afterwards.
literally
So
for a minute.
live
Yeah.
the van life, but chasing my dreams. But sometimes I'd go afterwards and go like, where would I be if I would have moved to San Diego, took that job at 21, would not, you know what I mean? But Simon Sinek has this quote. It says, some see risk as a reason not to try. Some see it as an obstacle to overcome. The risk is the same. To try or not depends on your perspective. And then one verse that I did have, just so people know that I do have a spiritual side, is Colossians 3:23. It says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord and not for human masters. So no matter if you want to live van life or the 9 to 5,
Right.
or sacrifice and pursue purpose, whatever you're doing, I think our souls will be happier when we know we're doing it for God.
Oh, for sure.
Instead of feeling like life is pushing us to have to do this because I have to provide and I have to pay bills and I have to, right? That's where I think people just lose passion, and
That's
then
good.
they're just kind of like, ugh.
Yeah. So Justin wrote, he had a question. He said, I got a question. Lately I've been feeling like I've been being flooded by the enemy, and all the stress and troubles come my way. I feel like I'm losing control of my house. Is God still there? Is he in control of my troubles? I don't want my kids to see me like this. Can you pray? and maybe give me a word. I think he is saying. So he's just basically saying like things are out of control. I guess how do you find God in that? I want to
Definitely.
address it because I can.
Yeah, we will pray for you first of all, because I think that's the most important thing that
For
we
sure.
can do.
Yeah.
I know from studying the Bible that we have to trust God. That's one important thing to do. I know from studying psychology that we have a tendency to want to do something that we can control when we feel out of control.
Right.
And unfortunately, I think that sometimes that leads us to do the wrong thing, right? I think that leads us to be selfish and, pick up the bottle or pick up, some bad habit and say, well, I'm going to become a recluse, right? Like I'm going to just do my own thing. And so I would just encourage you to trust God. And I would one of the things I spoke about this recently, how do you learn to trust God? Like, how can I do this? And I really think that it's simple. I think that you can learn to trust God by spending time with him. If I trust Vince with almost anything in my life because I know him. If I didn't know him, I wouldn't trust him. And I think it's the exact same way with God. And so spending time with God I know it sounds like a canned answer, but it's really not. Spending time with them, getting away. If there's one thing that you take into your own control, do that. Get away. Take your Bible and pray. And say, God, what do you want to show me right now? What is it that you want to show me? Open up to maybe a New Testament passage. The book of James is a great place to start. James 1, I think, is one of the greatest places to start for you right now. So maybe read that and ask God what he wants to show you through this. And then listen. Spend your time listening to him and not other things. Every time the enemy wants to distract us and give us all these other things to listen to, say, no, I'm not listening to you. I'm going to listen to God and do that.
I think you hit it spot on with the control thing, because for me, and just to let, I think his name's Justin, know that you're definitely not alone. The last 2 weeks have kind of been really stressful. Wife got in a car accident, car smashed up, money basically got hacked out of our account. You know what I mean?
This sounds like a rough week.
You know what I'm
you
saying?
kept this to yourself. I haven't heard about this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So stressed out, had to go, doctor, make sure the old ticker's working well. Then, yesterday on our way home from out of town, just start getting an argument with my wife. And I tell my wife, like, the last thing that I want with everything going on right now that I feel like I can't even control or get my head above water is to argue with you. But sometimes life gets crazy and chaotic, and I don't know what's happening at this guy's home, but the idea is I freak out when I can't control all of those things, and they all don't get fixed right away. So my opinion would be to understand that things take time, and then second, worship and praise as much as possible despite what you're going through. And Pastor Tom, who's off camera right now, can attest to this, is that even though we can't see what's ahead of us, I'm a fixer. I'm going to try to fix it. Literally the best way, because I ask God all the time, how do I set something down, God? How do I set something that isn't physical or material down at your feet? How do I cast my cares upon you? Because I feel like I'm still carrying them. Here, I'm sitting here doing this motion. I'm casting them, casting them, but I'm still feeling it. It's the worship, in my opinion, is the best way physically, emotionally, spiritually to cast.
Well,
those
worship, I think,
cares
gives
off.
you the context. You start realizing what's important. You're like, wait, it's just God and me.
And it's time. It's not
gonna
going
be all right,
to be
you know?
instant fix. Your household's not going to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can God do anything? Absolutely. But we live in a real world where time is relevant and things take time. But
Well, you're not alone, Justin. There's a lot of people that are dealing with a lot of things right now, and it's been heavy, Obviously, when you turn on the news, it's heavy, but it's been heavy in everyone's lives personally. And so let's just pray for him and pray for everybody. Let's do it right now. Lord, we just come to you right now, and we just lift up Justin. I pray that you just give him grace, give him mercy, Lord. I pray, God, that you would let him know how real you are in his life. I pray, God, that he would take the first step, but you take every other step, Lord, and you'd meet him where he is. And I pray that you'd speak to him and show him exactly what you need to show him. And I pray for everybody else, Lord, that's going through something right now, God. We're all going through something. And I pray, Lord, that you give us the grace and you give us the ability to acknowledge you and to get to know you better and to take the time to spend with you, to take the time to worship, take the time to read, take the time to pray, and take the time to call somebody if you put that on our hearts. Sometimes it's connecting with somebody else that knows you. So I pray, God, that you just give us those abilities to see what's important right now and focus on those things and let the other things go, because we can't even control those things anyway. So, Lord, we love you. We thank you for everything. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right,
Lunch
guys.
break. Hope you had a good lunch break.
Yeah. So have a good lunch, and we will see you guys next week, Thursday at noon. So,
YOLO.
Yep.